Hi, my name is Brittany J. Jones. In this video, I will be showing you how to do a narrow hem. A narrow hem is one of the most common ways that you will see in sewing directions to finish off the hem of your garments. I will be sharing with you a few different narrow hem finishes in this video. Finishes if you have a side split, if you have a full circle skirt and you need to ease in some fullness, and also doing a narrow hem on a facing. Let's get started. To create this hem, you will fold and press up 5/8 of an inch like I've done here. So you can use a seam gauge or ruler. You can even stitch along your seam line and use that as a guide and then fold that up to press. After you have that pressed up, you will open it out and you will take the raw edge and fold that into the fold here like so. And then you will give this a press. Let's go ahead and press that down now. Okay, I've just pressed up the raw edge so my hem looks like this. So now we can go to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch close to this inner pressed edge here, this inner fold. To do this, I like to stitch it so that the right side of my fabric is facing up toward me on the sewing machine. And then you can use a guide on your needle plate, or you can just feel where the fold is to make sure that you are getting a straight stitch. Let's go ahead and do the stitching now. Back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Okay, I'm back from the sewing machine and I've just stitched my narrow hem in place. So this is what the underside of the fabric looks like here. So this is the wrong side of the fabric. After you have it stitched, you can give it one final press and then you will be all done with the narrow hem. Let's take a look at how to do a narrow hem if you have a side slit. On one side, I'm going to do a mitered corner here. On the other side, I'm just going to fold up and show you how that will look. So for this edge, you would first fold up your lower edge, which this is the hem of your garment. You would fold that up, press your 5/8 of an inch, then you will fold in the raw edge, give that a press it again, and then you would stitch your lower hem completely in place. And then you would finish off your side opening. So first I'm going to go ahead and press this up and then we will stitch it, and then we will press the side opening and stitch that. With the lower edge pressed in place, now we can fold and press in this side now, and we'll also stitch it the same way that we just stitched the lower edge. Before I stitch this in place, I wanted to show you what this looks like down here at the lower edge. So after we have stitched this one in place, then you want to again open out your fold, fold in the raw edge, and now it looks like this. Up here by the point, you will have a stopping point for your slit. That would be a marking that you need to transfer from your pattern piece. You want to taper in that seam allowance so that your seam will look like this. When we stitch this in place, we're going to come up about 1/4 of an inch past our marking, and then we will pivot to go across to the other side. Okay, let's go ahead and trim away some loose threads here. And this is what the inside of this stitch looks like. And this is what it looks like on the right side of the fabric. We can now give our hem a final press. Now let's go ahead and do the other side. And this one we're going to miter the corner. So for this, I have pressed up 5/8 of an inch on the lower edge as well as on the side. And right down here in the corner where you have a point, we want to fold up right along that point for that corner. And then we're going to press this in place. Once we have it pressed, we want to trim the corner to within 1/4 of an inch. So go ahead and grab your scissors and we're going to just trim this down again to about 1/4 of an inch. This is going to help reduce the bulk in the corner. And so now when you fold up along your pressed edge that you pressed in, your corner will look like this. So now we can open out the 5/8 of an inch seam, fold in along that fold and crease, and you want to press it. You want to do that for both of these sides here, and then we'll be able to stitch down, and this one here would be a mitered corner. Now that you have it pressed up so you can see how it meets down here at the corner, now we can go to the sewing machine. I'm going to start here where I left off with my previous stitch. I'm going to come here and pivot and then stitch down, and I will also pivot and stitch across. I've just finished my stitch on this side here. This is what the outside of it looks like, and this is what the inside of it looks like here. This is 2 different options on how you can finish a narrow hem with a side split on your project. Let's take a look at how to hem a curved hem, or if you have like a full skirt or full dress. So on the inside here, and this also has a side slit openings, so maybe you have like a little slit right here on your garment. I'm going to be showing you how we can come up, pivot, and then continue our stitch on the other side. But first, let's just take a look at the hem here. So the first thing that I've done is I've did a 1/4 of an inch row of a basting stitch right here from the raw edge. I've come down 1/4 of an inch and I've just done a basting stitch all the way along the curved edge. This is going to help us be able to ease in the fullness, because once you start trying to turn in and create a narrow hem, it just becomes too much fabric, so you need to ease some of it out. The second thing that I've done is I've gone ahead and pressed up 5/8 of an inch, which again is the seam allowance. So I've pressed that up, and so this is what the hem looks like after pressing up the 5/8 of an inch. On this side, you can see that I've turned in along the 1/4 of an inch basting stitch, and this is what my hem looks like now, and it's ready to be stitched in place. I was able to get all the fabric eased in because I used a pin and I just pulled up on some of the basting stitches like so, and it just pulls in a little bit of the fabric to ease it in like that. So again, when you are folding in your raw edge here to meet your seam line and you're pressing that as you're going, when you get to places where it's just a lot of excess fabric, then you'll be able to just get a pin. You can pull up on one loop of that basting stitch and it would just begin to ease in fabric. And then that will help it fold in more for you to press it in place. I'm going to go to my pressing station and press it in place, and then we can stitch this down. Now that we have it all pressed, I'm going to go to the sewing machine and stitch it. And again, this is just an example if you had a curved hem with also a side slit in your garment. If you just had a full skirt or a side hem, you obviously would not have this, so you would just have to focus on making sure that you ease in all the fullness. But because this example is showing a side slit, I'm going to begin stitching at one side. I'm going to stitch all the way around here, and we're going to stitch right along the pressed edge. Once we get up here to the slit, we're going to go past it about 1/4 inch. Then we're going to pivot across and then come back down, continue sewing. So let's go ahead and do that now. And then once it's all sewn, we can remove our basting stitches. Okay, I just stitched in my curved edge. And again, this is for a full circled garment. This also has a side split if your garment has that as well. But the technique is the same for easing in the fullness. After you have your curved hem sewn, then you can just give it one final press. Let's take a look at how to do a narrow hem if you have a facing attached. So you may see this in garments like in a dress, in a skirt, in tops as well. So once you get to the step in your instructions where it says to turn out the facing to begin your hem, you're going to turn your facing onto the right side of the fabric. So you will turn it over like so. And your seam allowance should be pressed toward your facing. So on the inside of the garment, it will look like this. You may already have understitching done depending on what your sewing instructions are saying. But once you are ready to hem it, you will then turn the facing to the outside, which would be to the right side of the fabric. We're going to stitch 5/8 of an inch right here across the bottom of the facing. So you can grab a pin or two. You can place them at the bottom. So we'll go to the sewing machine. We will line up our raw edge with our 5/8 of an inch seam allowance line, and we will stitch right across here. You will back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Now that we have stitched off at a 5/8 of an inch, now we want to trim. With trimming, we want to trim off all of our facing, but not all of our fabric. We want to leave about 5/8 of an inch on the lower edge of our fabric. So let me show you how to do that. Fold back the bottom edge of my facing and place a clip here about 5/8 of an inch in. You can get your seam gauge or ruler out to be more precise. And I just put a clip. That helps me remember not to go past it. And then I like to just trim away all of the facing here. This is going to reduce the bulk. So we can trim all of that away. Once I have this trim back, now I can trim all of this excess off. So this is what it will look like. This is how you will trim off your narrow hem when you have a facing. You want to trim away all the facing, but leave about 5/8 of an inch of your fabric. So now we can flip this right side out. Once you have it flipped right side out, now we can go to the sewing machine and we can do a narrow hem along this lower edge. So now we can press up along our 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you have that pressed, then we will open it out and fold under the raw edge and fold that over to finish the narrow hem. Once you have it pressed, now you can stitch your hem in place. We'll begin here, you'll back stitch and stitch all the way across and back stitch at the end. Just finished sewing my hem in place. This is what it looks like on the inside. You want to give it one final press, and this is how you would do a narrow hem when you also have a facing on your garment.